Sing on! Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. And welcome to Wednesday's edition of the dceu Daily. And today we'll be reading many Screen Rant articles about the dceu, about the Joker movie, lots of things. And the other day, right, I was looking down my comments, and I don't get many comments on my videos, and one person said, "I love this channel." Do you realise how that makes someone feel? That makes that person feel that their efforts are not futile, are not wasted. So thank you to that person, because it's great, because I get about 100 views. I'm not a big YouTuber, very basic, equipment I'm using as well. So to be appreciated for what I'm doing is a wonderful thing. And I think we are building something very special with Big Mouth. And I will carry on trying to get people to know this channel. So do me a favour. Appreciate people. If there's someone in your life, if there's a YouTuber, if there's someone on Twitter you appreciate, tell them. Even if they don't reply, they've seen the comment, or they've heard you say it in real life, and it will rise them up to have a great day. Anyway, enough of that before you turn off and get bored. Welcome to Big Mouth. You can keep this conversation going by following me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, because I absolutely am Movies TV Mad. So should we read the first article? Apologies, of course, my reading is shit, but it's important to read these articles because they're very, very relevant to what we want to do on this show. So, the first one, Joker loses certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Why am I not surprised? These people purposely grading down their reviews, so the Joker movie got voted down as rotten rather than fresh. This is, of course, irrelevant. This site is irrelevant. Should we give it a read what Screen Rant have to say? When I say site, I mean Rotten Tomatoes, not Screen Rant. Joker's dropped below 70% on the Rotten Tomatoes, losing its certified fresh status. The Joaquin Phoenix starring film is one of the most talked about pictures of the year and is on track to become the highest grossing R-rated movie worldwide. Few movies released with the amount of mainstream attention Joker received, from theatres banning cosplay of the character to reported police patrol in response to concerns of violence. There was plenty of controversy surrounding the film upon release. The film garnered acclaim from a number of sources, many including longtime Joker voice actor Mark Hamill. Praised Phoenix's performance. However, the film saw something of a divide between critics and general audiences. Yes, there's those critics who are politically motivated to vote a movie down. Just imagine, right? You love a movie, you think it's amazing, but because it's against your politics and the kind of commentary you want to see in films, you vote it down. This means you should give in your press pass because you are corrupt. You are misusing your power, and it's outrageous as far as I'm concerned. By the way, I missed a bit out there. It's dividing critics and general audiences. No, it's not. It hasn't divided general audiences, because every member of the general audience I have spoken to via my many social media platforms, all I hear is positivity. So many blue ticks as well, loving this film, from the sporting world, from the entertainment world. But guess who have been negative about this film? Extreme leftists who don't like this film because it's not talking about representation and gender equality and race. It's talking about someone who needs his psych meds. It's someone who needs food, someone who needs somewhere to live, right? Who's living in a city, beleaguered, with urban blight, right? So that's not important commentary. Of course, it's the most important commentary. We continue. Rotten Tomatoes has updated Joker's score. While originally certified fresh, the score dipped below 70% and now sits at 68%, which is a brilliant score, by the way. It's a solid score, isn't it? But as I say, this should be in the 80s and 90s. Of course, would in a fair and just industry and in a fair and just intellectual critical industry, that would be the case. But we're not dealing with a fair and just intellectual industry, are we? So, although some may recall Joker sitting at 69% with a certified fresh label, this was likely a glitch since a number of reviews were being uploaded. Officially dropping below 70% takes away a certified fresh status. 68% is still on the positive side, whereas dropping below 60% is considered a rotten score. Some may be surprised to see Joker towards the lower end of the positive spectrum. When the film premiered at the Venice Film Festival, it received the Golden Lion Award, which is deserved, of course, and much praise from the audience. Appreciation at a limited release premiere doesn't always translate to how a majority of critics will react. However, although a number of critics praised Phoenix, a couple of common criticisms include the film being derivative and depressing. These are not elements, right? These are not elements to downgrade a film. Was it filmed well? Did the director do a good job? Was it acted well? Did the composer do a good job? Were all of the acts 1, 2 and 3 awesome? Yes, they were. So you give it the top of the range score. But oh no, it's derivative, and I can't even say the word, and depressing, right? So you downgrade it. This is, of course, contrived statements to find an excuse to downgrade a film. As I say, because these extremists didn't like the commentary in this film. These crazies didn't like the fact that it starred a white actor about a white character. They didn't like that. And that is the truth why they downgraded this film. Joker is a film with a gritty atmosphere, so perhaps a polarizing response was expected. Why? Why? It's a great, compelling movie with a great message. Why would you downgrade it unless you downgraded it on purpose? Although Joker has been received somewhat positively, there's a debate if it's Best Picture material. Of course it is, but it won't win Best Picture, by the way. Like critics and the general audience, Oscar voters are divided as well. No, the audience aren't divided. It's you lot who are pretending that. Right, divided as well. No, they are corrupt extremists who will not vote that film because they're political, because they want to give the award to somebody else. And I'm not going to say who or what background that person will be, but we all know. Do we remember Whoopi Goldberg winning Best Supporting Actress for Ghost? And Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze were ignored. We know what these people's agenda is, right? So, no, Joaquin Phoenix will not win Best Actor and Joker will not win Best Picture. Be prepared for that. It's disgusting, but it doesn't matter. The biggest award this film can win is from us and the box office. That box office shows you that people are going back for repeat screenings. It's a success. The people loved it, and there's going to be more Black Label movies, and that's all that matters. Rotten Tomatoes are irrelevant, and so are critics. At the very least, perhaps Phoenix will be recognised for his portrayal of the title character based on the amount of acclaim he's received. It'll be very interesting to see if the film is nominated for any awards. Probably not. Debates about Joker will likely rage on for the foreseeable future, although not universally praised. It is by the audience, by the way. Joker is a film that nonetheless ignites discussion about society, the mentally ill, and a lack of compassion. Like The Dark Knight and Logan, Joker is a unique comic book film likely to stay on the moviegoer's mind long after its release, unlike the MCU movies, and that's Martin Scorsese's point, isn't it? Yeah, I like that article. I didn't like what he was saying, but I think they spoke interestingly. There's some bullshit there as well, saying that general audiences are split over the movie. General audiences love it. You can see that from the box office and the reactions on Twitter. Just hashtag Joker and see what you get. The only negativity is from mostly female leftist critics and, of course, a few other leftist critics as well, because critics are political now. And this is the thing. It's insane, isn't it? It's crazy to judge a film because it hasn't got your political commentary on it, or you're racially and you're being racist and sexist towards the lead. Some of the stuff said about Joaquin Phoenix is disgusting. Some of these critics have even brought his late brother, River Phoenix, into the conversation. Disgusting, isn't it? This is what these people are. They want you to think that they're fair-minded people who want to give everyone a chance, but they're not. The extreme left are full of as much hatred and bile as the extreme right. And that's why both sides of the argument, to me, are deaf. And as I said yesterday on one of my videos, I am not a political person, but sometimes I have to talk politics because they've given you no choice. This is the thing now. I don't want a political film industry or a TV industry. I want to enjoy my movies. I want to enjoy my storytelling. I want escapism. That's what's in when I'm writing a story, that's what I do. But these people are crazy, and they've downgraded a movie purposely to hurt its Rotten Tomatoes score. But as I said, Rotten Tomatoes, it doesn't matter. It's like a plastic award. It doesn't matter. These bloggers and critics now are becoming more and more invisible to the mainstream audience. So let's talk for a minute before we go to the next article about how they tried to destroy this movie. It's the same people who tried to destroy Man of Steel. It's the same people who tried to destroy Batman v Superman. And I suppose in elements of the way, they did manage to hurt Man of Steel and Batman v Superman in the mainstream audience's eyes. We can't deny that. Batman v Superman and Man of Steel would have made a lot more money if these poisonous people, mainly MCU fans and MCU stans and other people who had an agenda against Warner Brothers at the time as well, did hurt those movies. Those movies could and should have made more money, but their box office is certainly solid at most. But why were they able not to succeed in destroying Joker? Because the director was very, very outspoken. He made his position abundantly clear from the beginning. He said he's not telling people that what the Joker does is right. He wants people to see a mentally ill man who is discarded by society and the dangers of doing that. And not only the ethical responsibility to protect members of our society. And people like Arthur Fleck, men and women like him all around the world, are being let down left, right and centre. And this is why Todd Phillips... Now, Zack Snyder, for example, is a very quiet man. He says a few things, but mainly he's not very outspoken. He's a very shy man. And it was easier for these people to destroy what he was doing or to hurt what he was doing. And I think the element of Warner Brothers, who came out and banned Access Media from the premiere as well, it says they're not taking this shit anymore. The Joker movie has made a hell of a lot of money, and these people are still crying their bitter tears, and I love it. Yes, Robert Pattinson has already chosen his Batman voice. Let's have a look at this. Robert Pattinson has revealed that he's already settled on a signature voice for his role in The Batman. The character recently appeared in a total of 3 live-action big-screen outings, most prominently Batman v Superman and Justice League. Amid the underwhelming reception, Ben Affleck's portrayal was largely praised. Despite that, the actor stepped away from the role, and Warner Bros. Opted to return to a younger iteration. After an exhaustive search and a number of screen tests, it was confirmed that Pattinson had landed the coveted role. The announcement was met with a mix of skepticism and applause for everybody who couldn't overlook Pattinson's role of Edward in Twilight Saga. There were others who thought him the perfect fit after turns in such films as Cosmopolis and 2017's Good Time. The adulation for the actor's work looks to increase with the release of Robert Eggers' psychological horror, The Lighthouse. Brilliant film, and any doubters, go and watch it and you'll have no more doubters. Co-starring William Dafoe, the film follows 2 men who work as lighthouse keepers. A film starring 2 men? Outrageous! I'm joking, of course. But slowly begin to unravel as a result of the solitude, and when confronted by their worst nightmares, already met with overwhelmingly positive reviews, there have been rumblings of an Oscar nomination for Pattinson. Speaking with Access Hollywood, Pattinson discussed at length that film and such potential accolades. Towards the end of the interview, however, the discussion turned inevitably around to the Batman. After briefly touching on Pattinson's jawline, at which Pattinson jovially mocked himself, the interviewer questioned whether the actor had practiced his Batman voice. Pattinson replied in agreement that Defoe's voice in The Lighthouse had the kind of gritty aspect he envisioned the Caped Crusader as having. Williams' voice in this is quite inspiring, for it to be honest, he said. It is pretty similar to the voice I'm going to do. I think Batman has a sort of a piratey kind of voice. Piratey kind of voice. Interesting. Pattinson goes on to self-referentially mock himself, offering a piratey intonation. As such, he likely won't be going full Jack Sparrow, but it would fit the character to have a more renegade natural given his unconventional methods at seeking justice. Whatever the case, the Batman voice has become as integral to Batman portrayals as the cape and cowl itself. Each has tended to be as distinct as the actors themselves, and as highly anticipated by fans. As the films, they have greatly differed over the years. Christian Bale opted for a guttural growl to hide his true identity. Affleck's version, meanwhile, used a voice modulator based on his comments. It would appear that Pattinson will lean more towards Bale's method. Interesting, because a lot of people didn't like Bale's method. I thought it was okay. Directed by Matt Reeves, the film is rumoured to be based on a long Halloween storyline. Casting on the DC outing has ramped up in recent weeks. So what do I think about this? Look, he can do whatever Batman voice he wants. It's not going to ruin the film for me. If it doesn't work, he still could be a great Batman. But look, he's a great actor. He's going to give us something very special. My favourite Batman voice is Michael Keaton, because he doesn't take it to an unrealistic fashion. He just changes it slightly. You can't really tell it's Michael Keaton, but you can. But it's a lot more deeper. It's a lot more aggressive in tone. I thought it was excellent. And he was the one who set the template for changing your voice, actually. Because, Adam West never used to change his voice, did he? It was just the same voice. So Michael Keaton and Tim Burton did something very special with that. But at the end of the day, it's not something I'm really focused on. A lot of people didn't like the Bale voice. I liked it. I didn't think it was bad at all. And we'll just see what we get from that nearer the time. But it is an exciting element of what's going to happen with this new film. New Batman, new Bat voice. So we spoke about this the other day. Suicide Squad director denies report he disliked Jared Leto's Joker. So let's give this a read, because this is very interesting. He did say something on Twitter. It was very brief, but let's see what they say. Suicide Squad director David Ayer denies claims that he hated Jared Leto's Joker. It's been 3 years since Warner Bros. And DC's anti-hero-centric film debuted, and they're already working on another one. This time, however, with predominantly different people involved, as James Gunn takes over helming the writers, the Suicide Squad. Right, they didn't write this properly, right? So let's say this again, right? James Gunn has written and directed the Suicide Squad, or is writing and directing the Suicide Squad, tipped to come out in 2021, and is described as a soft reboot. But as production for that goes on, the studio initially take on the IP has become the topic of discussion in fan communities, following a report revealing new details about the 2016 movie. Now, they're not details because they're unsubstantiated. Nobody has any quotes from anyone relevant. Right. This all began when a report from The Hollywood Reporter details how Leto was frustrated about Todd Phillips' Joker movie, starring Joaquin Phoenix, that he reportedly tried to kill it. He couldn't have killed it. He couldn't. It wasn't possible. It also reveals that the actor won't appear in Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, which we already know. And it seems like there's no plans for him to pop out in the Suicide Squad either. No surprise there. Part of the original article also implies that Ayer didn't like the actor's portrayal on the Clown Prince of Crime, something he vehemently denies. Ayer was asked on his official Twitter account to comment on the Hollywood Reporter's reporting regarding his feelings about Leto's Joker in Suicide Squad. The director obliged by straightforwardly debunking it. The filmmaker called it inaccurate information, adding that those depicted in the article is not his words or actions. Check out his full tweet below. Basically, he's asked by someone. The article says you were unhappy about his performance, so you cut him out. Why don't you clear this BS by your own words? You supported James Gunn, who shits on you in your movie, but not the actor who always praised you. That is inaccurate information, not my words or actions. It's a denial. He's not going to come out and say, I hated Jared Leto's Joker, is he? So, personally, I think it's true. They cut Jared Leto's Joker down. We know that. He was still quite prominent in the film. But if you look at the extended cut, which they released, right, he was in it more. And they only did that because the audience weren't happy with the amount of screen time the Joker had and how he was represented in the film. And at the end of the day, if David Ayer didn't like Jared Leto, would that say that he didn't cast Jared Leto? The DCEU had too many cooks in its broth, stirring its broth, and this is why mistakes were made. I think David Ayer didn't cast him and didn't want him as the Joker. Maybe David Ayer didn't even want the Joker in the film. These are things that will come out in the years to come, but they are my suspicions. There was so much anticipation on Leto's Joker prior to his Suicide Squad debut, bolstered by reports that the actor went totally method in preparation for his comic book role. The marketing for the film put him front and centre, giving fans the idea he would be a major player in the narrative. We all thought that. This is why there was backlash once the public learned he had very limited screen time, as if his appearance was only a glorified cameo. Since then, the actor has yet to reprise his role as the Clown Prince of Crime. If recent reports turn out to be true, his days playing the iconic DC villains are pretty much over. We knew that already. So even the Hollywood Reporter article doesn't really matter, because we knew this. As fans, we're more clued up than they are. It's pretty obvious that Leto is done, right? Admittedly, that's unfair for Leto, assuming that he truly put in the work to effectively play such a high-profile character. Considering how little he was in Suicide Squad, it's also difficult to have a set opinion on his version of the Joker, much more so to compare him with Phoenix Irritation. While there may not be any more Leto in the DCEU, comic book fans can still catch him over at Sony as Morbius, the living vampire. I'm not desperate to see that, but I do hope it's a success for him. I don't know what type of guy. Look, these actors are, let's just say, artists. They have an ego. So it wouldn't, look, if I was Jared Leto, I would have been pissed off about someone else playing the Joker, of course. But ultimately, it was the right move because Jared's Joker didn't work for the masses. And no matter how much I thought he did okay, they clearly don't want to risk giving him another go. As I say, they've gone with Joaquin Phoenix. I believe that Matt Reeves will cast someone else as his Joker because it's a different universe, and it will be interesting who that is going to be. So, Jason Momoa has said that Aquaman 2 will be way bigger than the first, says Jason Momoa. So let's have a look what Jason's had to say. He's been talking a lot lately, and he's becoming a big deal at Warner Brothers now. He's been, I think he's going to be pumped. He's definitely going to be a producer on Aquaman 2 as well. According to Jason Momoa, Aquaman 2 is going to be even bigger than the first DC film. That's saying a lot too, because the first Aquaman ended up being one of the biggest box office hits the world has ever seen. It topped out over $1 billion worldwide. He's not talking about box office, he's talking about the content of the film. It's a bit like a guy who sees a woman with large breasts and her cleavage is out, and instead of looking at her face, he's looking at the cleavage. This is the problem with these journalists who are obsessed with box office. As crowds flocked to the theatre to see Momoa take on the title character, who fans had only previously seen in the films Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice and Justice League. Released in late 2018, Aquaman took audiences into the origin story of Arthur Curry. Momoa, though he's not aware of it at first, Arthur is the true heir to the underwater city of Atlantis, formerly one of the most advanced civilizations to ever exist. With the kingdom being ruled by the power-hungry King Orm, who also happens to be Curry's half-brother, Aquaman must go on a journey to retrieve the legendary trident of Atlan and accept his fate of protector of the deep sea. Why are they telling us this, man? Just Entertainment Tonight caught up with Momoa at the premiere for his upcoming Apple TV Plus Series C, and he couldn't sound more excited about the upcoming sequel. Specifically, he teased Aquaman 2 as set to be way bigger than the first film, as there's a lot more in store on many more levels. Momoa even explains how some of his creative ideas might end up in the sequel. He said that the response from the fans was so incredible, he went to the studio as well as director James Wan to discuss ideas for Aquaman 2 and was told that they loved them and are so excited to do this next movie. He also spoke to E.T. about being thrust into the limelight after being cast in the DCEU and how his life rapidly changed when the movie was released. He joked that he'd somewhat been in hiding for 18 years and then Aquaman happened and boom, he's suddenly a household name. He then revealed he shared some advice with stepdaughter Zoe Kravitz, who has been cast as Catwoman, by the way. Yes, that is Hollywood, isn't it? That is Hollywood. It's not what you know, it's not how good you are, it's who you know. Who was recently cast as Catwoman in DC's upcoming The Batman. He calls her talented and beautiful. She's your stepdaughter, mate. Of course you're going to call her that. And fully capable of absolutely killing the role. But stressed she should also prepare herself for the attention that comes along with being in the DC world. While Momoa had earned a measure of fame as Khal Draco on Game of Thrones, there's no question that Aquaman shot his Hollywood profile into the stratosphere. There are so many unanswered questions when it comes to Arthur leading the city of Atlantis, as well as what's to happen with his imprisoned brother, Patrick Wilson. The former king, also the first film's post-credit scene, made it clear that Black Manta will be back. It looks as though the villain is probably going to turn up in Aquaman 2 to stir up some trouble in the Undersea Kingdom. It remains to be seen what Aquaman 2 will include, but fans can't wait to find out. And I think this is the thing, isn't it? Aquaman 2 does pose a lot of questions because we've got Orm in prison, you know, excuse me, always at the wrong times, isn't it? But yeah, and then, you know, Arthur is the king now. So in the first film, he's on the journey to Atlantis. He's on a journey becoming king, and he doesn't even know that he's right for the role. And that's what makes his character so beautiful in the first film. He doesn't think he should be king, but ultimately, if he doesn't become king, he can't save Atlantis, and he can't save the world up above that he treasures so much. So in the second film, I would imagine they will go at it this way, where maybe he's finding the pressures of being king a bit too much. Maybe it's getting a bit too much for him, and then something kicks off. And maybe there are invaders coming to Atlantis, although they have said that there'll be a lot more above ground than below ground. So I don't know what that means. I hope we don't get less Atlantis, because at the end of the day, an Aquaman movie, we want to see Atlantis. So something's going to happen. He probably is going to need to unite with Orm as well. So that dynamic will come back into play as well. So I'm really looking forward to Aquaman 2, and so should everyone. The first film was beautiful. They saved that film. It made $1 billion, and that's amazing. And finally today is another article from Screen Rant. I'm doing well for you today, Screen Rant. Give me some royalties. Justice League Snyder Cut has won over DCEU critics. This is a very interesting article by Brad Curran. So let's give it a read. The campaign for the Snyder Cut of Justice League has begun to see noticeable support from the detractors of Zack Snyder's past superhero films. In the wake of a family tragedy, Snyder stepped down from directing duties on Justice League, whatever, while Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon to direct major reshoots. Although the studio asserted that they were only intended to complete the film as Snyder had envisioned upon the movie's release in November 2017, it became clear that the version of Justice League that had arrived in theatres was not what Zack Snyder had intended. Seeing he'd never even heard of the Russian girl, right? Thus began the ongoing grassroots campaign to persuade Warner Brothers to release the director's original cut of Justice League, an endeavour that has persisted for nearly 2 years since the film's theatrical release. Snyder himself would begin stirring the pot by releasing never-before-seen images from his cut on social media, while a growing number of cast and crew of Justice League have also begun showing support for the Snyder Cut's release, with Jason Momoa being particularly vocal in his support for it. And as we've read in the other article, Warner Brothers love him, so he can do whatever the hell he wants. Among the more recent events surrounding the Snyder Cut, a salient development has been growing support. It has gained from many who have been less than pleased with Snyder's DC films. That can be attributed to a number of factors that have arisen since the theatrical release of Justice League. However, while winning over critics of the DCEU will not in of itself result in the Snyder's Cut release, it has done much to increase its visibility and show that the demand for it is not only there among the already existing DCEU audience, but that it is clearly beginning to expand. While the theatrical cut of Justice League didn't see a rapturous reception, it did receive a degree of credit for its lighter tone and greater amount of humour compared to its much darker predecessor, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Listen, I've heard critics say that Justice League is better than BVS, and for those people, never review another film again. Never go and watch another film again, because you clearly have no right to be talking about films. Anyway, that film had seen a highly polarising reception. Sound familiar? Joker? Right. Which effectively formed a rationale for Warner Brothers electing to revamp Justice League in the first place, although the movie had always been intended to be lighter in tone than Batman v Superman. But bloody hell, not a sitcom, right? Nevertheless, despite the film receiving a somewhat warmer reception among many who had previously been dissatisfied, yes, which means they're irrelevant. Right, with the direction of the DCEU Justice League was a significant financial disappointment, which means sitcom isn't right for DC. It works for Marvel. It's not going to work for them forever, by the way, but it works for them for now, but it's never going to work for this franchise. Right. At that point, many who had been critical of the DCEU's early days were ready for the franchise to move on from Snyder's influence on it. Although the Snyder Cut campaign had kicked off almost as soon as Justice League hit theatres, the idea of there being another version of the film that was anywhere near complete was taken far less seriously at the time. But we knew, didn't we? We knew, and we kept on going. It was pretty obvious there was another version because Zack told us from the beginning, right? As soon as Justice League, a version of the film that was anywhere near complete was taken far less seriously at the time and was widely seen as an outright impossibility. Why? Why was it an impossibility even 2 years ago, right? We saw a video where he wrapped filming in London. When the film was wrapped, he completed his movie and he cut it. There is a version of his film. Apparently, there's even 2 or 3. I don't know if that's true or not, but bloody hell, why was it an impossibility? Right. Even as a change.org petition accumulated tens of thousands of signatures, the notion of the Snyder Cut faced a much greater uphill battle to gain traction. However, there was more information about the movie's production history and the differences between the 2 versions of the film would emerge. That would begin to change. The first real indication that there was validity to the idea of the Snyder Cut would emerge when Zack Snyder himself began releasing images and storyboards from his version of Justice League on social media. As the push for Snyder's version of Justice League progressed, the director's teases would reveal snippets of scenes and story points not featured in the theatrical cut, as well as characters who had been completely exorcised, such as DC Universe's biggest villain, Darkseid. Most recently, Snyder has revealed that the version of Justice League would have shown General Swanwick, played by Harry Lennox in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, to have been a disguised Martian Manhunter. The most significant impact that Snyder's social media post would have would be to demonstrate that his cut of Justice League was not simply a longer and darker version of the one released in theatres, but a completely different movie unto itself. It is. Ultimately, the question of the cut's very existence would finally be settled when Snyder himself confirmed it publicly at the Director's Cut event earlier this year. Other members of the Justice League cast and crew would also begin to show increasing amounts of support for the Snyder Cut as well. Storyboard artist Jay Oliver would be one of the earliest voices. Jay's been brilliant, by the way, hasn't he? Confirming the Snyder Cut exists, while revealing details of the unhinged portrayal of Superman in the climactic battle. Jason Momoa has also vocally advocated for the Snyder Cut release, along with recently confirming to have seen it, while Ray Fisher has also voiced his support for it. Additionally, as more details about the Snyder Cut came out, the campaign would gain another prominent supporter in the form of filmmaker Kevin Smith. I love Kevin Smith, but basically, some of the stuff he says, so even though he's got a lot of light on him, I suppose it's great that he's supporting for the release. He's not one that really I say, oh my God, we've got Kevin Smith on our side. The effect that Snyder, Smith and the Justice League cast and crew would collectively have would be to transition the debate around the Snyder Cut from one of its existence to just how close it was to being finished, and of the likelihood of it actually being released. While Warner Bros. Remains the major summit to climb for the Snyder Cut to see the light of day, establishing its existence beyond a shadow of a doubt was always necessary first step to get to that point. What's more, even those had not let's start again. What's more, even those who had not enjoyed Snyder's previous DC films were now taking notice of it, which is very, very important. Where the lobbying effort for the Snyder Cut where the lobbying efforts for the Snyder Cut go from this point is a bit of an open-ended proposition, but there's clearly no end in sight for it. More and more high-profile voices are giving the campaign their support, with Deadpool co-creator Rob Liefeld being a notable example. He's much more important than Kevin Smith, by the way, within the comic book community. Moreover, Zack Snyder's reveals may well have only scratched the surface of the unseen material from his cut. while Justice League cinematographer Fabian Wagner has also similarly released behind-the-scenes images from the movie on social media for everything that's already been unveiled about the Snyder Cut. The 214-minute running time of the movie would likely enable Snyder and his collaborators on film to continue trickling out teases of his version of Justice League for years to come. Furthermore, the campaign has also raised vast amounts of money for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which has given it greater attention and even approval from the public, including among critics of his work on the DCEU. Snyder's upcoming zombie heist movie Army of the Dead may also prove to be a major determining factor in the Snyder Cut release, with Snyder having effectively been granted complete creative freedom on the film. The reception of Army of the Dead could be viewed as a statement of sorts on his future as a filmmaker. This is very true. More importantly, as far as the Snyder Cut is concerned, it could also lead to a new wave of support for its release. Should the film be subject to a negative or divisive reception, that could establish further blockade to the release of the cut. However, if Army of the Dead ends up enjoying widespread acclaim, that could prove instrumental in raising even more support for the Snyder Cut being released, especially among those not already enamoured with Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. As the push for the Snyder Cut continues on its release, undoubtedly hinges upon Warner Brothers being convinced that the demand for it is strong. It is strong. However, it has been increasingly evident that interest has spread beyond Snyder's core fan base, whether out of sheer curiosity, simply supporting a filmmaker realising his artistic vision to its completion. More and more critics of Zack Snyder's work on the DCEU are expressing a desire to see the superhero ensemble that he had originally intended. While the decision to release it rests with Warner Brothers alone, that effectively serves to establish that the audience for the Snyder Cut of Justice League is continuing to grow. A brilliant article. I really enjoyed reading that to you. My throat didn't, but I did. So let's go back to this doubt whether it existed or not 2 years ago. As I said, I thought that was ridiculous. It was obvious. We saw him wrapping up in London. We knew he completed a cut. We all knew that before he even said anything. But what we didn't know was going to happen, that he was going to stir the pot. It's really funny with the Snyder Cut kind of movement, because everybody thinks they're responsible for it. The only person really responsible for it is Zack Snyder. He did a great kind of Pied Piper thing. He went on to Vero, kept on releasing pictures and artwork, telling us who was going to be in it, who wasn't in it, and, you know, things like that. That excites any geek, He's the one who created this movement. And for any of you who don't see that, you really have been sucked into it, which is beautiful. So Zack Snyder is not just a genius filmmaker, artist, and director. He also knows how to start a massive movement. I think the question of Warner Brothers releasing it is gone now. It's going to happen. The question now isn't if, it's when. So please like, share and subscribe the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back for more DCEU Daily tomorrow. Thank you very much.